The news at 11 is all over breaking news here in our backyard. A day that will go down in history for the wrong reasons. Good evening. I'm Leslie Foster. By now, you know, rioters stormed Capitol Hill. They made it inside. They're here to protest the election results, and things escalated fast. There is a lot to this story. We've got new reporting, and we're going to put it into perspective for you. So here is where things stand right now. There's a curfew in effect for D.C. Police are stationed across the city. They've spent the night clearing the crowds from Capitol Hill. They've made arrests. We also know a woman was shot in the Capitol today. Just a few hours ago, D.C. police confirmed she died from her injuries. Also breaking, lawmakers returned to Capitol Hill this evening to continue counting the Electoral College votes. This is the final step needed to certify the results for President-elect Joe Biden. This is the kind of coverage you come to expect from our News at 11 team. We're going to walk you through what happened, what happens next, and you'll hear the story from people who were working inside the Capitol. I want to begin with John Henry. He's live on Capitol Hill. Some of President Trump's supporters are still there. So are police. John, how are things looking right now?
You know, Leslie, right now things are much more calm here in the Capitol grounds. We're here at the intersection of First and Constitution. You can see police are still here in this area. Right now is secure, but just about 3 hours ago, things were much different. You can see this video we have of the parking lots just west of the Capitol building. There, Trump supporters gathered in the lot and stared down police. In response, D.C. police, Capitol police, and the FBI made a line between them and the Capitol building. The president's supporters threw a few bottles toward police, and that was all before officers decided to ultimately surround them in a tactic that we've seen a couple of times this summer called kettling. Ultimately, they were able to disperse the crowd. Now, at this point, we're not sure how many people were taken into custody. However, we do know one Washington Post video journalist did post on Twitter that they were quickly detained and then released. Now, today's events occurred just yards away from the Capitol Hill neighborhood to the east of the Capitol building. Many people obviously lived there. And one woman actually summed up today for her as, quote, atrocious. Coming up later in the show, we'll tell you what locals there had to say about today's events. Leslie?
Yeah, this was happening in their neighborhood. It impacted them directly. All right, John, thank you. We're going to continue our coverage with Nathan Baca. He is live along 14th Street, not far from Freedom Plaza. Nathan, what's the view from where you are right now?
Well, the view right now is that things are quiet. However, what we noticed before, and we're going to show you some video, was some tense moments whenever some members of the Trump supporters were out there wanting to leave their hotel lobbies, go onto the street to do something as mundane as get dinner. However, D.C. Metropolitan Police blocked that. They came in force, outnumbering the protesters in many cases by 2 to 3 times. And then you get this back and forth where the police would get more and more and start to tell people, like, no, you cannot leave. And in effect, what happens is that they're in the lobby. Now, I've actually just been in the lobby for the past few minutes, just listening in on what is going on, the mindset. First off, a lot of it is just mundane talk about where to get dinner, and then also trying to figure out as far as flights to get out. So many of the people here plan to leave tomorrow. However, another thing that goes on inside this hotel lobby, it's a convention of sorts where people of like minds are starting to talk about conspiracy theories or these theories about what actually happened in their mind in the Capitol. You start hearing the word false flag quite a bit, something that is completely not true. So reporting live out here near Freedom Plaza, Nathan Baca, WUSA 9.
So basically they came here to make a mess, to leave chaos, and then leave. That's essentially what they did today. We'll talk more about this a little bit later. A lot happened today. So let's walk you through it. It all started when President Trump spoke at a rally this morning. He continued making untrue remarks and told supporters he won the election. Shortly after, some of those protesters, some of those rioters, stormed the Capitol, breached the steps, and made it inside. And Tom Dempsey joins us live to walk us through those moments. Tom?
Well, Leslie, the only word to really describe what the experience was like being outside the United States Capitol building earlier today would be surreal. The United States Capitol building, such a symbol of the United States of America and its history, but we spent hours outside the Capitol building earlier today. We could see people scaling the walls, desperately trying to get inside. We saw people rushing the doors. Some people even got inside the Capitol building, as we know, earlier today. Hours later, it's a much different scene. I'll step outside of the way so I can kind of walk you through what we're seeing. You know, a small pocket of police officers are standing guard here. There's a barricade now up towards the Supreme Court building. We used to be able to get pretty up close to the Capitol building hours ago, but a much different story now. We've seen Maryland state troopers walking around the grounds. We even saw bomb-sniffing dogs earlier today roaming about the grounds. Again, lots of law enforcement, federal law enforcement, state troopers on the grounds of the Capitol building right now after a truly violent and deadly day. What started as a day of rallies for supporters of President Donald Trump calling to overturn election results while pointing to unfounded claims of fraud turned to deadly chaos on Wednesday afternoon. A riot breaking out on the steps of the U.S. Capitol as thousands waved flags and chanted nearby. Things quickly turned violent with the mob pushing past police. Around 2 p.m., maskless rioters surged past barricades, entering inside the Capitol as Congress counted electoral votes in the presidential election.
Without objection, the chair declares the House in recess pursuant to Clause 12B of Rule 1.
With the situation leading to an evacuation, violence inside brought gunfire, with one woman getting shot and killed. Pictures posted to social media showed parts of the mob infiltrating the offices of elected leaders and even the Senate chamber. Police later used tear gas to try and clear the site as D.C. National Guard and federal law enforcement responded. As protests continued and crowds grew just outside the Capitol building, things began to quiet down when President Trump tweeted for supporters to go home. As the evening went on, law enforcement and National Guard troops pushed out protesters and reinforced barricades, putting an end to a riot targeting the U.S. Capitol. A live look at the U.S. Capitol building at this hour. Again, law enforcement has a line of officers guarding the grounds at this hour. A much different story, Leslie. Much quieter right now. Again, we've seen state troopers, federal law enforcement right now, and very clear to see that order has been restored to the grounds here. Live outside the U.S. Capitol building, I'm Tom Dempsey, WUSA 9.
Hey, Tom, before I let you go, you called this a surreal moment. What did you hear those rioters saying as they charged toward the Capitol? Could you hear them chanting something?
You know, I didn't hear them chanting something, but I do remember one chant and phrase I'll remember hearing from the rioters was one person saying, "We outnumber you," and he was talking to the police officers. And Leslie, it's just amazing, as you know, as I was saying, amazing, surreal, again, that word, knowing just what the U.S. Capitol represents and to see people storming past these barricades. We saw all sorts of flags being waved. We saw United States flags. We saw Confederate flags being waved on the grounds of the United States Capitol building as they went through the barricades today. And they were, walking around the grounds out there as they were able to break through those barricades and really just cause chaos and violence on the grounds today, Leslie.
Hey, you saw it up close. We saw it from a distance. Either way, it was a stark, disturbing scene. Tom, thank you. I want to bring Adam Longo into the conversation. Adam, you spoke with someone who was inside the Capitol when this all went down?
That's right. Somebody who wasn't invited but didn't necessarily have to force his way inside either. Perhaps by now you've seen all the videos here taken inside of the Capitol by people who were part of this insurrection to try and stop Congress from doing its constitutional duty to certify the election. So I talked to the self-proclaimed citizen journalist who shot this video about what he witnessed on this unprecedented day of democracy in danger.
I was quite excited to see this going on.
So you're saying you approve of what happened today?
Do I approve of what happened today? Yes. I approve 100%.
Let me be crystal clear. Steve Baker, who shot this video inside the rotunda, was part of the mob that penetrated the Capitol building. An angry mob hell-bent on destruction and deviation from democracy. Their actions led to a woman's death right in the hallways of where freedom's veins pulse through the corridors connecting the two chambers of Congress.
I didn't know that it was a shot until I rounded a corner, and what ended up happening was I had a young female officer that came over to me and took me by the arm and said, "Sir, I want to escort you out of here safely." And I went, "What are you talking about?" And she's moving me towards the door, and she said, "Sir, do you feel safe? You first feel safe?" And I said, "Well, do you feel safe?" And she goes, "No, I don't." And I said, "What's the problem?" And right then on our left was the girl who had been shot, and they were working on her and giving her CPR at that moment. And there was just blood everywhere.
At one point in its terrorizing tour of the Capitol, that mob made its way to Statuary Hall and then inside House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's office.
Once they got to Pelosi's office, there was some damage done. They tore up Pelosi's signs that enter her office area, flipped over some tables, some chairs, things like that. That's as much of that I saw before the police came in and started stopping that from happening.
So you were inside of the Speaker's office?
Yeah.
Okay, and there were 10, 20, 30, 50 people inside the Speaker's office?
Probably anywhere from 20 to 30 at the time that I got there. You know, they were taking souvenirs, like tearing her sign. They broke the actual first sign you see going into. They tore that off and broke it into little pieces for souvenirs.
Now, one of the most pressing and looming questions hanging over this horribly historic moment is, how could this have happened? How are the authorities so overwhelmed and seemingly underprepared? Coming up in a couple minutes, you are going to be shocked by what I was told by a member of Congress from Tennessee who was sheltering in his office with a bird's eye view of what was unfolding on the Capitol grounds. Strong allegations against the Capitol Police. We'll see you again in a moment.
A lot of people have some of those same questions, Adam. Thank you. Today's violence appears to have shaken the Trump administration leadership. Top White House aides are resigning tonight, and our partners at CBS News report members of the cabinet are discussing invoking the 25th Amendment. That would remove President Trump from office and elevate Vice President Pence for the final days of this administration. CBS's Margaret Brennan reports they are concerned about what could happen in the remaining 2 weeks. She also notes that this has not formally been brought to the vice president. Well, it was certainly terrifying for the lawmakers and their staff members who were working when those rioters stormed Capitol Hill. The buildings were placed on lockdown. Delia Gonsalves joins me now. Dee, you've been out all day. You've been talking with several people on the Hill. We watched it from the outside, but they experienced it.
Yeah, it was a frightening ordeal and a very long day for a lot of congressmen and women that we spoke to today. We're here live at First and Independent Southeast on the southeast side of the Capitol, where you can see some emergency crews are on standby, but a very different scene from what we saw earlier this afternoon when police in riot gear were getting ready to storm the grounds of the Capitol. They were only mobilizing more than an hour after Trump supporters had stormed through the Capitol building. We talked to a lot of congressmen and women who were evacuated, were sheltering in place. Many, I'm told, were in underground bunker. Their staff members inside the House office buildings here. A lot of them were inside as well and on lockdown. So I talked to these congressmen and women. Many of them wouldn't share their locations with me, obviously, for security reasons, but they did share their thoughts and some very detailed play-by-play of what happened inside. Take a listen.
At a certain point, the Capitol Police came in the chamber and said that the protesters had breached the first floor. And they asked us to, they locked all the doors. They stayed on the inside, asked us to stay in our chairs. Debate resumed. Then another report came in quickly after that by the police that the protesters were in the rotunda, which was right down the hall from us. And at that point, debate was suspended. It was suspended for probably quite a little while, maybe 15 minutes. And then we were given instructions. They tried to start debate back up again, did briefly. Then instructions then came through that we should look under our chairs for gas masks. Every other chair had a gas mask, and they asked us to get those out, be ready to put those on. Eventually there was pounding on the doors on one side of the chamber. And when the doors were being pounded on, they asked us to evacuate.
I've never seen anything like this. I was really horrified that we saw a violent mob essentially overrun the Capitol of the United States, running over the floor of the Senate and the House, taking down American flags in front of the Capitol, replacing them with Trump flags. And this is supposed to be a moment where we respect the peaceful transfer of power.
Whether it's 10 hours, which it could be, or whether it's tomorrow or the next day, you know, I'm going to be on the floor of the House of Representatives voting to certify the election of President-elect Biden and Vice President Harris. That is our democratic constitutional responsibility.
I do feel sad because we thought this couldn't happen in our country, and obviously it can. So, but now I mostly feel strong resolve to keep fighting for the ideals that this country truly stands for.
I don't know why Donald Trump spent 3.5 hours watching this on TV before issuing some sort of a statement, and the statement was very weak. If this had been protesters of any other ilk, they would have busted heads, they would have locked people up, they would have tear gassed them and water hosed them, and they'd be in jail right now.
And that was the voice of Congressmember Kwesi Mfume of Baltimore. He used to be the president of the NAACP. Listen, Les, there was one common theme amongst all these lawmakers in the midst of all this chaos, anger, and violence: resolve. They want to get back to doing their job. Les, back to you.
Let's hope they can all do it with some unity and get this back on track. All right, Dee, thank you. Let's focus on the police response now. MPD is the lead law enforcement agency securing the Capitol, and we know officers are across the city tonight. Mike Valerio has the latest reporting on that front. But Mike, first, we want to talk about this delay in sending in the National Guard. What happened?
I mean, Leslie, a major delay. And on that storyline, we know that the Defense Department initially denied D.C.'s request to have more National Guard troops not only surround the Capitol, but secure the Capitol complex after a request was made by D.C. council members, as well as the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. And we know from D.C. council members, when they sent a statement with furious language in the heat of the chaos, in the throes of the chaos, that request was denied. They sent it out to all of us members of the media through Twitter, sort of with incredulity, sort of asking why and what happened here. But Leslie, we know that it had to do with the top of the command here. Ryan McCarthy, the Army Secretary, spoke with Mayor Bowser earlier this evening, and he said that for his part, it took about a half hour in those stressful moments to iron out the request, and then he had to send the request to the Secretary of the Army, or the Secretary of Defense rather, who serves at the pleasure of the President, and he intimated that it was that moment that held up the request. We're trying to have some more reporting from our colleagues inside the West Wing to iron out what exactly happened there, but that seems to be the crux of the holdup, why more National Guard troops were not deployed to the Capitol immediately. But the Capitol, as you heard, Leslie, is secure. MPD, the main law enforcement agency there, Chief Conte is operating out of an emergency operations center in Judiciary Square, where he himself is in control of all of the officers who have come in from as far as New Jersey that are securing the complex for the overnight hours into tomorrow morning. Leslie.
It is a mammoth task for his first full week as the new chief of the D.C. Police Department. All right, let's continue this conversation about police. Adam Longo is back with some perspective on that.
So let me just be real for a second, Les. I've had a number of people reach out to me today and tell me that had the Black Lives Matter protesters done any of this back in June, we'd be looking at a body count a lot higher than today. That said, I spoke with a congressman from Tennessee, Democrat Jim Cooper of Nashville, who's leveling an alarming and frankly shocking allegation against the Capitol Police that they were somehow complicit in allowing the Capitol to be breached. This is a congressman. Listen to a bit of our conversation.
Some people are worried today that some of the police were complicit with the protesters. It's one thing to be friendly and to de-escalate the violence. It's another thing to take selfies with them and to tacitly let them go through the lines.
Did you see that yourself, sir?
I haven't. I've been pulled up in my office, but I've never seen a crowd that's less afraid of the police than this one.
Are you saying that you have the belief that some of the Capitol police officers and other members of law enforcement were complicit in the actions that unfolded today?
At best, they were overwhelmed and did not anticipate what they had been warned of for 10 days by Trump, in which he said even this morning he would join the protest and go to the Capitol. At best, they were overwhelmed. At worst, they let this protest proceed unlike any other.
Congressman Cooper compared what we saw today to 1814, when British troops torched the Capitol and forced Congress out of the building. Now, he was still barricaded in his office at the Longworth office building when I talked to him about 6:30 tonight, and he thought Congress might have to reconvene elsewhere before the leadership decided to proceed at the Capitol after it was cleared, and that's what they are doing right now. Les?
They sure are, Ads. Thank you. Let's get real about the events of today, and perhaps we should start with the elephant in the room.
Nerve-wracking it is.
On social media, in conversations, in some of the reporting that you're hearing, conversations by phone and text, it is clear that this historic and violent and chaotic day exposed how this country and the people who enforce its laws value the lives of certain Americans. Remember June? Swift and heavy force met peaceful protesters marching to demonstrate Black Lives Matter. Those images are forever imprinted in our consciousness. Compare that to today and the hours upon hours of images where we saw a mob roaming the United States Capitol after they'd stormed it before law enforcement stepped in to save our democracy. Actions fueled by the words of a president who pushed them to take their anger to the streets. Anger over an election he lost fair and square. Now, they came intent on creating more fissures in a nation with new fault lines uncovered by these unfounded claims like this election stole their vote. It didn't. They lost. And perhaps today will be a turning point. I sure hope so. But what's clear is these domestic terrorists won't go quietly into their good night. Not even a curfew can ensure that. Two systems of justice, a divide illuminated once again, this time at the citadel of democracy. I want to take you back live to Capitol Hill. Congress has resumed its joint session to certify the Electoral College vote count. They are picking back up where they left off when both the House and the Senate were forced to evacuate their chambers. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle condemned what happened today after returning to the Senate floor.
We will not be kept out of this chamber by thugs, mobs, or threats. We will not bow to lawlessness or intimidation.
No, these were rioters and insurrectionists, goons and thugs, domestic terrorists.
Several Republican senators who had planned to object to the vote count changed their mind during the riots. They now plan to support it. WUSA 9 is home of the Verify team. It's how we help you cut through the noise and get to the facts. And tonight they are looking ahead. So here's the question. When Congress finishes the count and certifies Joe Biden as the next president and Kamala Harris as the next vice president, are there any other legal avenues to challenge this election? 3 legal experts told our Evan Kosloff, no, there is no constitutional path to a challenge. The new administration will take the oath of office January 20th. Our Verify team's mission is to get you answers and show you how we got them. So send us your questions anytime to verify@WUSA9.com. We got more to talk about, but we're going to pause here and check in with the chief. Top or shut.
Now, your WUSA 9 weather forecast, sponsored by Cox.
All right, Leslie, remember yesterday we showed you these maps. Snowfall the next 7 days. European model had 6 to 12 inches west of 95. Now it has nothing. I mean, maybe an inch in the mountains. So it's come into line with the American model, which also has nothing in the immediate metro area and maybe just a dusting north and west. So we'll still watch it. It's several days away, but it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out model-wise because they're not in agreement like they were with that December 16th storm. 46 tomorrow, mid-40s pretty much across the board. A little cooler on Monday. Temperatures by then in the low 40s. And it will be dry over the weekend. A little cold for the game, but dry for the game. Running tomorrow, 30s to start, and then 40s. But the good news is sunshine finally returns tomorrow, and there'll be no wind tomorrow either. So a pretty good day. Friday, storm stays south. Next storm may not. Weekend, dry and chilly. Temperatures in the 40s. So here we go. 46 tomorrow, mid-40s on Friday. Even though the storm stays south, a lot of clouds and a rain or snow shower is possible south of town. For the game, chilly, cold at night, and then maybe a late rain or snow shower Monday. Better chance on Tuesday, but does not look as threatening. And then next Wednesday, just chilly, highs back into the mid-40s.
All right, let's get back to our breaking news today. Rioters are still gathered in our city hours after they stormed Capitol Hill. John Henry joins us live now with how things are looking.
Hey, Leslie, once again, things are much more quieter here near the Capitol grounds and the nearby neighborhoods. This is what it looked like around 8 o'clock in the parking lot just to the east. There were about 100 to 200 protesters, Trump supporters, who were gathered here standing off with police. Now, the big reminder here is that this all took place just yards away from a massive residential neighborhood here in the district, the Capitol Hill neighborhood. Thousands of people live there, and they all had to deal with this earlier today. Here's what one woman said about this entire situation.
To have it happen is terrifying. It's terrifying. I'm frightened. I'm frightened for my neighbors. I'm frightened for the children who live in this neighborhood, and for those of us who want to peacefully see a transition of power. This is an atrocity of which I have no proportions to compare to.
Locals obviously not happy about what happened just in their backyards. The good news is we went through that neighborhood about an hour to hour and a half ago. Things there very calm, just like here at the Capitol grounds. We're going to be keeping an eye on it throughout the night. Leslie?
All right, John, thank you. You know, a lot of protesters came to town today. Some of them stormed Capitol Hill, others did not. Colby Satterfield joins me now. And Colby, you watched a lot of this unfold.
Yeah, Leslie, we did, and this is as close as we can get to where we were this afternoon when we watched those rioters scale the side of the Capitol building and even try to break into the north side of the Capitol. This after the mob of Trump supporters made their way in through the front. And as some of these supporters watched, some of his fiercest supporters, they said that's just something they can't get behind.
Clouds of smoke and clashes with police. Outside the United States Capitol, pro-Trump rioters attempted a second time to seize the seat of government, scaling the building and breaking through doors.
There's not enough cops here to handle us, and that's troubling.
Trouble that Isaiah Kuzinga says spiraled out of control and forced him to take a step back from fellow Trump supporters.
Trying to egg everybody on. And those are the people that we do not need with us, because they make me look bad. Because with them going up, they're just destroying everything that we're trying to do. We're trying to show everybody that we're compassionate about America right now. Because actually everyone that's leaving right now, they're not supporting this. Because this is bullcrap. Because this is like the opposite of what we wanted.
What Felice Pete says she wanted was fair votes, coming from North Carolina to advocate for that.
We feel that the election needed to be audit and fair and true, and all legal votes count. I mean, if we lost, then we lost, but we can't lose with irregularities.
Her concerns leading her to bring her 9-year-old son with her to the nation's capital, so he too could see the opposition to the election firsthand.
He was witnessing history today, that the people stood up. And at every turning of America, people had to stand up.
To do what? Kuzinga says he's not even sure.
They want to tear this whole entire building down, but if you tear it down, what's the next step? That's like the main thing that I want to ask everybody. They don't know like what the next step is.
Hours after this chaos unfolded tonight, Leslie, it is finally quiet. Live on Capitol Hill, Colby Satterfield, WUSA 9.
Yeah, apologies there. There were some obscenities and some of the things that we could see in the crowd. So apologies again. These things happen in fluid situations. All right, let's move on. All right, so a quick word about Maryland and Virginia and their response to all of this. At the request of the mayor, Virginia Governor Ralph Northam sent members of the National Guard to assist with security at the U.S. Capitol. He also dispatched 200 state police officers, and he's placed Arlington and Alexandria under a curfew until 6 tomorrow morning. Maryland Governor Larry Hogan mobilized 200 state troopers to support D.C. and U.S. Capitol Police. He also sent a message on social media. Take a look.
I never thought I would see a day like this.
in America. All Americans should be outraged by this attack on our nation's capital. This is a heinous and violent assault on the heart of our democracy.
All right, so let's sum it up. Congress is working through the process of certifying the Electoral College vote as we speak. D.C. police are stationed near several hotels downtown, keeping demonstrators inside. Others remain on the streets, even though D.C., Arlington, and Alexandria remain under a curfew until 6 a.m. D.C. police have made about 52 arrests so far. There were 14 D.C. police officers hurt, 13 people taken to hospitals today, including the woman who was shot and died at the Capitol. She is among the 4 who died today. Our time together tonight is coming to an end. I know it's been a difficult day, and I wish there was something I could say to you right now that would sum all of this up and make you feel better. But if anything we saw today is going to lead to real change in our society, each of us is going to have to put in the work. It's on all of us. Thank you for staying up with us tonight, and thank you for trusting this team of dedicated local journalists to guide you through the events of this day. We'll be back at it tomorrow, starting with the Get Up DC team at 4 a.m., and I'll see you back here in the evening. Have a good night.